Developing a video game is hard. So hard, in fact, you'd have to take every single video essay on this platform at face value, because very few of us can genuinely grapple with the notion of what it really takes to make one. Designing a game is like a four-dimensional puzzle where hundreds, if not thousands, of dedicated industry veterans work in tandem with one another, oftentimes creating frameworks for pieces of designed content that someone hasn't even made yet. It's like having someone design your home's roof shape and blueprint without having any idea what the walls are going to look like. There's a great deal of trust, awareness, talent, and effort that goes into any production process, but video games? That's an entirely unique beast. With all that being said, here's why my opinion is fact, and these devs are fucking stupid. Zombies. Whether you prefer to subscribe, do that by the way, please. To the capitalistic interpretation of the creature, being a mindless, dim-witted automaton driven entirely by consumption.
Okay, so the average salary is what, like $100,000? Did you just hear this motherfucker?
Or the more simplistic and candified version, usually depicted in your horde shooters, B-movie popcorn flicks, or Fortnite. Oh, God. Fortnite. Zombies are everywhere. They're in our books, television, movies, video games, toys, and basically every market consumable product in history. For as widespread and integrated into the cultural zeitgeist as zombies are, they're widely seen as overused, and oftentimes a trend to be chased. This was epitomized from the late to early 2000s and 2010s respectively. It's rational that while we did get some really fun, competent, and interesting pieces of post-apocalyptic media from this era, it's sort of hard to deny that half of it is available in the same flaking shade of dead. Towards the start of this era, Capcom, one of the primary champions of zombie media and fiction, having created and helmed the Resident Evil franchise, released an entirely new IP under the name Dead Rising, a few short months after the launch of the Xbox 360 home console. Dead Rising differed from Capcom's previous portfolio of games due to its unique selling points of being an open sandbox zombie title that encouraged its players to both explore an American shopping mall filled with hundreds of rendered zombies, but also boasting a feature so unique, it's rarely been mimicked, if ever, in games since. Anything and everything as a weapon. Anything as a weapon, while as accurate as 2006 technology allowed for, really did encompass more usable weapons than we'd ever seen in games at the time. Anything meant sports gear, craftsman tools, firearms, hunting kit, outdoor furniture, toys, books, spit, banana, televisions, mannequins, boxes, antique battle axes, banana, spit on the fucking banana. It never really came down to imagination. You had a predetermined number of weapons, but there just so happened to be hundreds of them that the diversity sort of sold you on the marketing tagline. Not all of them useful, but a surprising number of them quite useful indeed. This freedom meant, unless you were looking online for ideal strategies or locations to the best weapons, you, as the player, had to discover for yourself what worked and what didn't. Every weapon had its own animation and unique power attack that made nearly every weapon have a sense of nuance and intentional design. This helped you truly believe that your character, against all odds and down worse than the Marianas Trench, had to use that potted plant to make it out of that sticky situation. I'm not referencing the down bad thing. You can go back to the other. This system worked, both as a ring into the next generation of gaming marketing that Xbox and PlayStation had been alluding to, but also functionally for the game's design and difficulty. And difficult it was. With no autosave system and a timer-based design philosophy, you needed to make proper use of your free time, typically spent goofing off, helping survivors, completing main missions, and seeking upgrades to your arsenal. Not everyone loved the timer system, and that's understandable. But within the overarching design of giving you pulses of excessive zombie bloodshed and trying to tell you a story, it really did a great job of stopping you from overindulging in any one activity, leading to burnout or fatigue. Since you operated on a narrow and tight schedule, having open access to a broad assortment of weapons and healing items both allowed you to immerse yourself into the chaotic pace of the game's events, while also comedically allowing you to identify with the weaponry as absurdist, everyday utilities and items that would practically never serve as a good weapon, but just did here. Okay, so tell me if I'm weird here, but the merchant from Resident Evil 4 is kinda sex. Sometimes I'd wonder what it would be like if everyone in the world disappeared for a week, and I was able to sneak into buildings and stuff and just gather everything I've ever wanted, like a weird raccoon with an addiction to pop figures. Why did I fucking hate pop figures? It's been a random thought I've had since I was a little kid. I mean, how cool would it be to go up to those tall game shelves they have at Targets and Walmarts and just snag every copy of every game and every console and have there be no repercussions for my actions? Then I could just go home and play all the games I'd always wanted, and even the games I only passively wanted to play, and just seethe with joy. A game like Dead Rising, not being set in a nondescript abandoned town, or a nondescript abandoned city, or a nondescript abandoned forest, but a shopping mall. A place you and I can both conceptualize as a place filled with stuff we see and hear about every single day just seems so cool to me, and it still does. Being able to not only wander a digital recreation of this familiar place, but being able to act upon and interact with everything as if it was mine to take is still such a nuanced and cool idea. Game graphics and designs have only gotten better, and while I do love aspects and swaths of modern gaming, they've increasingly become more and more nailed down, non-interactive and static worlds. But that's a topic for another video. Except for you, baby boy. You let me do anything. Yes, you do. I could just fucking... This directly opposes Dead Rising's design sensibilities of allowing interaction of world objects to be the real depiction of next-gen technology and design. After reviewing and being praised as a highly unique, albeit clumsy take on the zombie genre that this guy loved more than anything when it came out, Capcom likely didn't see it as its next AAA juggernaut and moved resources back into its plethora of other proven franchises and projects. During this brief lull, Capcom began seeking a developer to take over the reins of the Dead Rising franchise for them, while providing oversight and design guidance as needed. Capcom decided on Canadian development studio Blue Castle Games, famed for fuck ton of baseball games? Cool. Blue Castle later rebranded Capcom Vancouver and now oh dear. With all that being said, here's why my opinion is fact and these devs are fucking stupid. Blue Castle was put in charge of the Dead Rising franchise, and after a delay here, a prequel there, we finally received the much awaited sequel to the Dead Rising franchise. Dead Rising 2 was widely seen as a vast improvement upon the previous game's successes and failures. It scored about equally as well as the original, and featured a new protagonist, a compelling whodunit narrative, a sprawling casino-inspired locale, online co-op modes, and more weapons than you can shake a stick at. It was clear that Dead Rising 2 was a grand success, and everybody who played it fell in love, and the people who made video essays on it, give or take, over 13 years later, would have nothing but good things to say about the flawed, yet ambitious title that improved on basically everything the original had to offer and then some. Thanks for watching, guys. I know this one was shorter than intended, but as a wise philosopher once said, amidst the torrent of feigning alliances, let in not absolution, but rather astuteness in one's own brevity. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but when I said like a second ago about nobody would make a video essay on that one thing, I wasn't actually done with the video yet, and I maybe lied. I'm sorry. One of the major selling points for Dead Rising 2, and Bluepoint's biggest contribution to the franchise up until this point,
you said we were gonna go play mini golf.
Up until this point, was the weapon combo system. You see, rather than throttling the game engine into an early grave, Bluepoint saw fit to add an additional layer to the anything as a weapon mantra Dead Rising had championed by allowing players to combine select weapons and items together to create off-the-wall, nuanced, and absurd weapons that held their own charm and properties. This meant a Bowie knife and some boxing gloves could become a Wolverine-esque melee weapon, capable of slicing through the zombie hordes with ease. Combining a baseball bat and nails would get you a powerful striking weapon with its own cool animation and deadly capabilities. Yada yada, stuff along those lines. On release, this feature was lauded as being an ideal addition to the game's gameplay loop, since it allowed for more useless game objects to see revitalized and quirky reimaginings as more powerful and useful tools of destruction. It's still considered to be a fan-favorite feature today. With many people recalling their memories of the Dead Rising series by oftentimes rattling off a tale regarding one of these combination designs. The combo system made it so every instance of these weapons included a unique attack animation as well as a power attack, which properly reinforced the previous design philosophy of ensuring every weapon in the original Dead Rising had its own weight, design, and identity. It was this design consideration that truly sold users on the sense of breadth and design, yet detail and execution, when the champion feature of the series up until this point felt so focused and refined. While these weapons are certainly iconic and fun to use, they are indicative of a sort of blemished understanding of what Dead Rising as a franchise was built on. What did we say before?
But also boasting a feature so unique, it's rarely been mimicked, if ever, Was I always in this cave?
Anything as a weapon and anything combined into a weapon aren't exactly congruent ideas. Now, I know what you're thinking. I wonder if this dude knows where I could find those merchant nudes. I do. Hit me up on Instagram. But I also know what that guy's thinking. Dude, Video Man, it's just more cool stuff. Why do you have such an issue with more cool stuff? Great question. The answer comes down to balancing. In order for combo weapons to be viable, fun, and ideal weapons, their ingredients need to suffer a bit of a functionality nerf to allow for combo weapons to naturally be an ideal utility. Not to mention, if you're in a shopping area with unlimited spawning materials, will you ever want to end up with riffraff items? Or would you power through to have an inventory of absolute heat and sick combo weapons? More often than not, you opted for combo weapons and food items. This meant that using any old thing as a weapon, while fun in the early stages of the game and when you're fresh-faced and new, was a poor strategic decision. That's not to say Dead Rising 2 lacks variety in objects to be interacted with, simply that you won't want to use them as diversely as you did in Dead Rising 1. Now, this creative decision alone didn't kill the franchise then and there. Dead Rising has more than a single sequel and more than a single medium of content made for it. So why do I feel this feature killed an entire franchise? Oftentimes, the easiest way for developers to expand on their ideas when working into a sequel is to operate on the bigger is better model. As famously stated by Gears of War and Unreal Tournament designer Clifford Harriet Blazinski,
Gears 2 is going to be bigger, better, far more badass than the first game in every way.
This mantra, while specific to 2000s era Epic games, really does speak to the general philosophy of game designers working on a follow-up iteration to a beloved title. After offering us everything as a weapon, then revised to everything can be turned into a weapon, where else is there to go? Dead Rising 3, the Xbox One generation Dead Rising title, had to one-up everything the previous title did, with little consideration of removing, but rather expounding. Combo weapons were back, and they gained unique elemental and design variations, as well as combo vehicles being introduced to further up the ante and make traversal and zombie kills more plenty and saccharine in execution. Gathering combo weapons was also made easier via a locker system that allowed previously created or unlocked weapons to be gathered pre-assembled in mass. In a move to streamline the combo weapon system, work tables, the locations where you combined weapons in the previous game, were removed in favor of allowing your player character to craft any any combo weapon directly out of his or her inventory. I wouldn't constitute this as a bad thing necessarily, but when crafting an open world map filled with fiendish and aggressive creatures, it is a bit questionable to relegate the function of acquiring the most powerful craftable weapons to the user's inventory, especially when hand placing locations where these items can be made manually serves as an excellent tool to pace out and balance the game's alleged survivalist backbone, as well as evaluate the non-combo weapons and their utility. Letting users freely combine combo weapons without even the implementation of a resource like duct tape or screws to allow for that sort of stuff really highlights the dev team's vision regarding random objects being viable weapons. If you don't really care about anything being used as a weapon, just let them combine the two objects conveniently placed next to each other and call it a day. Spend balancing and designing a video game. While this convenience in design was great for those only interested in quick, moment-to-moment carnage, it did sort of undermine the game's atmosphere and immersion, and only doubled down on the finite combo weapon selection. This was made worse when realizing that most of the combo weapons are in tiers in of themselves, meaning only a handful of weapons would be viable or practical to use, which further dwindled the list of potential weapons. These additions, while arguably served to improve the original design considerations made in Dead Rising 2, only served to further alienate fans of the original who enjoyed its simplicity and gameplay design sensibilities. Dead Rising 3 served to be a bit of a flop critically for Capcom, but was still considered by many to be a solid evolution on Dead Rising 2's mechanics and addictive zombie killing loop. I even found a great deal to appreciate in Dead Rising 3 as a sort of mindless power fantasy, and still consider the visuals to be a treat, albeit a little bleak for the franchise's tongue-in-cheek tone. The combo vehicles were absurd, some psychopaths were more memorable than others, and while the anything as a weapon notion felt further watered down, I did enjoy Dead Rising 3 on the grounds of being a fan of the zombie genre of media, as well as having interesting weapon designs and even more over-the-top zombie killing mayhem. But now to the elephant in the room. You know what? No, I don't. I actually, I doesn't deserve it. I only gotta fucking do this shit. Dead Rising 4 is considered by many to be the absolute worst the series has ever produced. Featuring a return to the famed city from the first game, Willamette, Colorado, and protagonist Frank West, the game was critically and financially panned by critics and game fans alike. Dead Rising 4 featured a revamped inventory system that relegated all healing items to a generic medical cross on the UI, meaning every single food and medicinal item disappeared after picking them up. This change in design once again deprioritizes the series' utilization of wide arrays of interactable items for the sake of convenience and streamlining a game system that depended on complexity. Combo weapons served to be nearly the only viable means of damage, alongside firearms and explosives, further reducing the number of diverse weapons available to players. By this point, the writing was on the wall. Making anything as a weapon is clearly not a priority for Capcom Vancouver, and combo weapons were the first step leading towards the eventual miniaturization of the game's item roster and gameplay functionalities. Dead Rising 4 also introduced strongholds, safe houses designed for players to reprieve from the zombie hordes, which let players purchase pre-made combo items from vendors using the in-game currency. Being able to go into a stronghold, cash in hand, non-purchasable thankfully, and buy an inventory full of your favorite combo weapons while echoing design sensibilities from Dead Rising 3 simply furthers the notion that general items are useless, and combo weapons are the sole means of dealing with any of the game's obstacles. Uniquely, Dead Rising 4 really leans into guns, explosives, and throwables alongside those combo weapons to provide some degree of diversity. What exactly are we doing in regard to expanding and evolving this franchise? Designing for combo weapon-oriented gameplay, in every game since Dead Rising 2, affords less development time towards hundreds of unique weapons and items, and rather a select few, highly refined weapons and items. While this might make sense on paper and from a design perspective, I suspect it's a major reason some Dead Rising fans, such as myself, find this game feeling so static and simple. I do empathize, however, since I imagine designing hundreds of weapons and items could get a little tedious and time-consuming without seemingly appearing to evolve the game's design or story. But Dead Rising was built off the hefty technological feat of having interactivity at the forefront of its design, using the rationale that it's a ton of work is simply not a viable reason. When all that's left on the table after removing broad interactivity is a third-person open-world zombie game. We have those. Those existed and continued to exist as the franchise matured and evolved throughout the years. Without that sole identifier, Dead Rising 4 was effectively just Dynasty Warriors with zombies and bad puns. Bad puns that were supposed to be nostalgic from a game that had like 4 puns and this in its runtime.
Give Ross a gun. Thanks. You're welcome. Sorry, Tanya.
Oh my! Capcom Vancouver had most of its upper management and designers axed from the company following the turnout of Dead Rising 3, and the replacement figureheads of the company simply didn't have the resume or the talent to properly iterate or adapt Dead Rising in a manner that felt compelling or new. Needing to up the ante once again, Dead Rising 4 even introduced a mech suit that could be combined with other large stations around the game to once again make things
Bigger, better, far more badass than the first game.
By this point, Dead Rising 4, both narratively and design-wise, more resembled a straight-to-Game Pass B title than a AAA effort from Capcom Japan all those years before. This release fundamentally placed the series on indefinite hiatus and led to the closure and demise of Capcom Vancouver's division in its entirety. The weapon combo system left Capcom Vancouver in a situation where the only way to look was up. Similar to the Saints Row franchise, after you become the President of the United States and fight aliens, you really can't help but wonder whatever happened to being a gangbanger in the wide-open metro cruising along to Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy. As time progressed and the iteration on the combo weapon system progressed along with it, design resources became more and more pushed towards promoting and polishing the systems that encouraged the developers to focus on less weapons as ideal and functional ways of playing the game. Amidst the ever-evolving landscape of modern AAA gaming, being a third-person open-world zombie game was the farthest thing from unique. This meant that less people were willing to explore the franchise had they not done so already. Peripheral games being developed alongside the Dead Rising franchise did much of what Dead Rising was doing, but with more focused and inspired design inspirations. Because Capcom misunderstood the base appeal and function behind said appeal of their original title, and never once considered retaking the reins of designing the franchise themselves, Dead Rising very quickly began to lose its identity, becoming a shapeless and underbaked generic third-person zombie game whose biggest selling point was the number of zombies on screen. While the combo system is very cool in nature, it became the sole contribution and staple identity of the franchise after Capcom Vancouver got reign of things. General weapons and items in the environment progressively became seen more as clutter and ingredients to be used in a finite list of predetermined gameplay styles, rather than a rewarding and balanced element within the gameplay as it was. This furthered the spectacle visually, but did come with a degradation in depth, as well as moment-to-moment gameplay choices. I understand if Dead Rising 1 isn't for everyone, and while impossible to compare, please don't yell at me, I'm a baby. I do find the Dark Souls games to also feature mechanics and design philosophies that many might see as obtuse or unfair. It was the commitment to these features and design choices that led to Elden Ring being one of the highest grossing titles in FromSoft's catalog. What separates Dead Rising's difficulty and restricted moment-to-moment gameplay from FromSoft's grueling difficulty and mechanics-based movement gameplay? Well, FromSoft didn't let go of their ideas when they weren't perfect to a select group of gamers. It's that FromSoft understood that their games wouldn't be made for everybody, but would absolutely be an ideal sort of game for an ideal sort of gamer. Their confidence and dedication to their way of making a compelling video game is why they were able to expound and develop a stable of unique and iconic titles, many of which are seen as the best the medium has to offer. Do I believe Dead Rising ever had the opportunity to do the same? I wouldn't know. We never really got the chance to find out. And while the Dead Rising franchise is, for the most part, a walking corpse of its former self, I am hopeful that Capcom will return the franchise to its former glory and give us a taste of what a real, next-gen, Japanese-made, American video game should look and feel like. Thanks so much for watching. Guys, the response we got on the RE4 Treasures video has been insane, and I owe you guys a great debt for watching, subbing, and liking it. I hope you also found something to enjoy in this video as well. It had a ton of new editing and pacing challenges and was, like the RE4 video, an insane amount of fun to voice over, edit, and write. If you liked what you saw and heard and would like to further support the channel, a like and a subscribe are always appreciated. What did you think about the Dead Rising combo system? And do you have any memories of the series itself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below the description. I'm brand new, but started this journey over on my Twitch channel almost a year ago, twitch.tv/ArcticUS, where I stream games and content near daily. If you guys would like to tell me what you thought of the video over there, or would just like to hang out with my community, they're the sweetest people I know on the internet, I'm sure we'd love to have you stop on in for a kickback sesh. I have a few more serious ideas for videos in the pipeline, but haven't gotten around to really brainstorming those or how they would work with how I am. So if you have any ideas for videos or topics, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, but remember to please stay golden. One of the major selling points for Dead Rising 2, and Bluepoint's biggest contribution to the franchise up until this point, was the Wepo Wepo. Was the Wepo combo system. It was the Wepo combo system.